Don't believe the lie. Yeah, it's that time of year again, little Halloween show. And we'll probably have a couple of them. I just like the fall colors, but other people, they're breaking out the occult symbolism. And there are targeted individuals who deal with that stuff with their gang stalking. And there's probably some of you out there, oh, come on, really? Magic? Demons? I'm dealing with real stuff, not another one of these videos. I've got directed energy weapon attacks. People are breaking into my house. I've got workplace harassment. Just last week, someone attacked my personal property. Come on, magic? Gosh. Well, it's real. It's not real in the way that they want you to believe it is. But just like when you try to tell someone that you are a victim of gang stalking, what happens? Well, what do you mean? People are doing what? I've been to that restaurant. Nobody's ever done it than me. Oh, yeah, I know the manager at that place. What, they're messing with you? Well, I'll talk to him. Well, I don't know. He didn't know anything about it. I don't know. Why do you think everybody's after you? What, are you special? What are they getting out of it? And on. Okay, so unless you've experienced something, it just, you can reason it away with philosophy. You can do all kinds of things. And some of that stuff, you just don't want to believe it. There's people out there that, well, I don't want to know. And I don't blame them because life is difficult enough. But there are targeted individuals who deal with the occult, who deal with the spiritual dimension. And I think all targeted individuals do, okay? Even if you're just one of those people who believe that you're in a government program. Or a secret society has marked you, the Freemasons or something, or whatever is in your community, the higher-ups. The good old boy society has decided to put a mark on you. Well, they're influenced spiritually, okay? And I had a question from Nick a while back about the authorities being involved in gang stalking, and yeah, they are. Okay, I've said plenty of times, just because you're a politician or a police officer or whatever, doesn't mean you're involved in gang stalking. But of course, this stuff goes from the top down, right? And the spiritual dimension, they're at the very top. And people are their puppets. So whether you're dealing with the occult or whether you're dealing with a government program or whatever, the little spiritual fingers are at work, and they are critiquing and manipulating the minds of your attackers. The public view of the occult has an ebb and flow. It kind of goes in and out. Back in the 60s and 70s, you had it become very dark and sensationalistic. You had Anton LaVey, and you had Aleister Crowley. He thought he was the Antichrist. I think he tattooed 666 on his forehead, which is, in reality pretty ridiculous because that has nothing to do, with him. The Antichrist is not going to believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God. He's going to believe something else altogether. I've talked about that. In fact, I'm probably going to make a video about the Mark of the Beast. Now that I've done the Abomination of Desolation and the Islamic Antichrist and all that stuff. I'm not going to get into it now. But biblical knowledge and truth is going to take you a long way, and it eliminates a lot of the deception. His mom thought he was the Antichrist too. She called him the Beast. People around Aleister were convinced, and there's all this weird stuff. And a lot of people around him went insane. And that's another issue that you deal with, whether you're dealing with the occult or just, a victim of regular gang stalking. And the people around you and the people that are doing this stuff seem like they're getting away with it. Okay? It looks that way. That's an illusion. Okay? And that's really the way the whole world works. And sometimes, people will go to different ministers or whatever. And the whole idea is that if you are a Christian, your life is going to change and you're going to have all this, wealth or whatever. You're going to be blessed with supernatural health and all these things. And I think that there are benefits, okay? But most of those are not in this life. And the Bible is very clear on that, and a lot of preachers will flip that around. And you have to wonder if they're playing tag team with the devil. Because what the Bible says is that many are the afflictions of the righteous. There are a lot of people who are dealing with a lot of difficult things, fiery trials and everything. In the Bible, it says that, the servant of the Lord, his heart almost failed when he saw the prosperity of the wicked. Their children are not, afflicted. They're healthy. They don't have financial issues. The locusts are not eating their crops. They live long lives. And surely I have kept all thy statutes in vain until I went into the house of the Lord and I saw the end of them. Okay. And that's after this. Okay. So in this life, you're going to have a lot of illusions. To get back to the point, these ministers will flip that around, and it's strange because the good people are going to be getting hit by the kingdom of darkness. And if they throw a dynamic in that they're being tormented by demons or afflicted or something like that because they are vessels of wrath, they are preordained to be damned, or God is not happy with them, or they're not giving enough money, or whatever they can do to manipulate, well, that's evil. That's a way to really twist someone's brain. But it's like that. You're going to deal with that. And, like with Alistair, he became famous, he became rich and everything. But there was a lot of dark stuff involved in that guy's life. And, he's, probably not doing very well right now. There is life after this life. Maybe Alistair repented. Maybe something happened, but whatever. I mean, you're speculating. But the point is there's a type of ebb and flow, and it goes from that dark, sensationalistic thing to something that's a lot more covert. It's like gang stalking in that way, too. Targeted individuals will get very aggressive attacks. It's very obvious. They're led on to the fact that they're being hunted. Suggestions will come at them. They're being watched. People are reading their mind. People have put spells on them. They're hexed. They're cursed. It's their destiny. Destiny plays a big part in the occult, too. And it doesn't have to be pentagrams and all that. That goes into different philosophies and so forth. And I've mentioned before that when you get into secret societies and all that stuff, it all goes back to Egypt. And that's kind of interesting because Egypt was the first kingdom after the Tower of Babel. Okay, and that's right after that God handed over the nations to the sons of God according to their number, the principalities and powers. Interesting. So it all goes back to that. It's all connected. That's my point. But there's that ebb and flow. Okay, it goes from the dark sensationalism, and it looks like it's something more innocent. White magic. White warlock. I just have crystals. I'm into wisdom and herbs and all these things. Or I have a spirit guide. Right? That's pretty famous. And I know people like that. I dated a girl that was like that. And something would talk to her, and she would know things that were going to happen. And I think she knew it was evil. But people can have that ideology in their mind that, they're locked into a certain destiny or whatever. And, these things are very deceptive. So you can go from something that looks obviously evil into something that looks more innocent. I think that's probably more realistic when you're dealing with evil. They come to steal, kill, and destroy, and they masquerade as ministers of righteousness, angels of light, and you get into different religions. They have different philosophies, and that's really when you get into something that's antichrist. Okay. Oh no, Jesus. Oh, he was great. He was awesome. But no. He wasn't the Son of God. He was confused about that stuff, but he tapped into the true power of the universe, or whatever. That's when you're getting into something that looks good and it's not. But from my experience, people involved in the occult and gang stalking, they don't believe they're following their spirit guide into the white light. They know what they're doing is wrong. There's a lot of culpability involved. Even when you get into secret societies, you have a lot of that, and they do that purposefully, okay, to psychologically bind, the individuals involved in this stuff, they, get them into weird rituals, sexual things, all kinds of, sacrificial stuff, whatever makes the individual feel like they're crossing the line, right? That they're kind of, sealing their soul or whatever. And that binds people. They can get away. They can repent, but they receive that pushback, and we're going to talk about that because even though something about the Bible that Christ is more powerful than the kingdom of darkness or this, that, or the other, it doesn't mean they're not going to attack you. It's like the things that I've talked about before when you're praying concerning maybe electronic harassment or V2K, demonic attack, whatever. People are harassing you at work. They're coming after your personal property or breaking into your house or whatever. Just because you're praying doesn't mean that it's going to stop. It can. God could do something. There's things out there that can happen, but you're still going to deal with it. Okay? That's kind of what the whole point is of us being here. We have to work through it. We have to experience it. And we have to kind of wrestle around with this stuff. And faith is a part of it. But, I've dealt with that. I've had all kinds of things. And when you get into the deliverance ministries, it becomes a little more obvious, the psychological strongholds that are formed. And gangstalking is no different. Right? You go into that place where, things are almost irrational. I've experienced that the paranoia is just so high. You're just worried about everything all the time. You have all these protocols and everything, and it looks crazy. But that's the way it's designed, okay? You never know when it's going to happen. You never know when you're going to be attacked. You don't know what it's going to be. You don't know what they're going to do. And you're always kind of on alert, and you have to learn to kind of put that stuff aside, follow your protocols, and just try not to worry about things. But it's hard, and you get into that point where you're worried about it all the time, and that would seem irrational. Well, the whole idea is to get you processing information differently, to get you to the point where you're dysfunctional. And when people are attacked by the demonic realm, very directly, the same thing happens. Okay, and you start wondering things. And that's when people get involved in, different ritualistic stuff or amulets, crosses. They start, thinking about holy water and blessings, and maybe they got to call up a certain type of priest or whatever. You guys remember the movie Exorcist, the Heretic, where the guy finally, he went out into this place, I think it was in Africa, to find out a certain type of methodology for getting rid of a spirit. And it's just, they lead you down these rabbit trails, okay? But you got to deal with the pushback. You have to get to the place where you're not reacting. You're not reacting the way they want you to. It's just like gangstalking. But when you combine the occult with gangstalking, it's intense, okay? I've mentioned this one before. There was a guy that used to have a channel, and he was a targeted individual that got chased into a place where he was actually homeless, and he was making videos. And one of the videos that he made, he was actually burning money, right? And I turned on the video. This is about 3 years ago, and I was like, what the hell is this guy doing? And he was convinced that somebody had put a curse on the money. And you used to hear people talking about that more a few years ago. The targeted individual community has changed a little bit. But yeah, he's lighting these, I don't remember what it was, $20 bills on fire. And I was like, wow, but that's how it works. And, whether you're dealing with, somebody who says they put a spell on you, or you get sensitized to something else, the spiritual dimension can take advantage of that, right? So a lot of times it can involve a geographical area, or it can involve, something else that you've been sensitized to. And when you come in contact with it, or when you come into a situation that involves whatever it is, then they will use that. They will start to attack you with whatever, right? And the problem is, and I've talked about this before, that a lot of people, they'll separate technology from the spiritual dimension thing, right? We're not going to get into that argument, because I think they're both interconnected, but it's very hard to differentiate that. Some of the things that targeted individuals deal with electronic harassment can be mimicked by the demonic realm, like V2K or other things that happen to them. They get shocks in their body, or they feel like needles are poking them, or whatever. Their skin gets hot, or their ears start ringing. The demons could do that stuff too. And so it's wow. I mean, how do you tell the difference, right? I mean, it's just crazy. But as that example, when he would, when he touched the money, he started to have these symptoms. He started to feel anxious. He started to have, who knows? There was a lot of things going on, and he came to the conclusion, there's mojo. There's mojo on the money, and so he's going to burn it. Nothing wrong with the money. Okay, nothing wrong with with your dwelling. There's nothing wrong with the furniture in there. And the solution is to draw near to God and be persistent with that. He'll draw near to you, and the devil's going to flee. It's very clear in Scripture. And when you get into the deliverance ministries or something like that, that could be a problem too, because then people, they want to go get delivered. Oh, I need to be delivered. Something's going on. I'm having the panic attacks again, or I feel like I'm under attack, or whatever. Are you messing around with the horoscopes? No. Are you into pornography, or is this, you got that person living at your house again? Do they bring in an heirloom and put it in the attic, or no? Okay, so what's the solution? You need to cling to God. You need to walk with Christ. You need to have a very close relationship with Him, or what? Well, they're going to come in and come after you, or they're going to push you, or they're going to try and get you to believe something that's not true. That's the solution. Okay. And I think the truth gets obfuscated by those things. And then people can even get into sacramentalism. Well, I prayed a prayer, or I made my peace with God, or I've done this or done that, or I've got this picture of Jesus on the wall, or I've got a cross, and there's nothing wrong with those things. But that's really not what's going on. Okay? But the attacks are so powerful, right? That, I mean, it just seems undeniable. And if you're not experienced in that, you're going to come to a lot of different conclusions, and you're just going to be, dragged around through the mud. And, especially if you're dealing with people who are aggressive, right? I've dealt with that. I mean, I could tell you guys some stories, and I think I've told the one about the individual who was involved in that. And I was, I'd run into him, and I'd spent a little bit of time. And this guy was, he kind of just threw it at me, and he wanted me to, look at his little rock collection that he had, and he had me, touch them, feel them, and hold them in your hands and all this stuff. I've told this story before, I'm pretty sure. And I'm like, okay, whatever, but I had already kind of decided I wasn't going to, hang out with this guy too much after that. But I had went out, and I was walking my little dog. I had a dog at that time. And I was, just playing around, letting him, run around in the country. And I was digging up little rocks and so forth while I was, out there walking the dog. And I had dug one up, and I looked at it, and I was like, my gosh, it was a very distinct rock. He had one that looked, basically, it was almost just like a skull. And it wasn't something that was manufactured. It was something that it was just a natural formation. I'm like, God, I'd never seen a rock like that before, and I dug this thing up. And I was like, my gosh, that looks just like that rock, And so anyway, I cleaned it up, and I took it over there, and it was the very rock from his collection. How does that happen? It wasn't an area where I had ever been with that individual. In fact, I didn't, I was just out driving around. I used to drive around on this road out in the country, and it would go for probably about 15 miles, and I had never even been to that location before. There's a bunch of houses out there now, but I'd never even been there at that specific location. I'd never pulled into that turnoff before. I usually just drove down the road. It's way out, I'd never been out there with him and never talked about it. And so there was no way that it was pre-planned. And that rock had looked, the way I dug it out, it had been there for quite a while. How do you pull something like that off? And that's the kind of weird stuff that targeted individuals deal with, right? The topic of synchronicities is very popular in the targeted individual community. That's pretty weird. How does that work, right? How are things synchronized? Is it that people are just watching you all the time? I mean, that kind of falls apart logistically. How do they know where you're going? How do they know how to set all these things up? Well, I've talked about this before, and if you've listened to my channel, you know where I'm going. The spiritual dimension has a different perspective, right? Time dilation, okay? And, who knows exactly how all that stuff works and how far out they can see. But I've experienced things that go decades out there, And depending on how you're going to interpret these things, it could be a lot further than that. Okay, so when a target or an individual is getting attacked with street theater that's clairvoyant, or they seem to know what you're thinking, I think they just know how you're going to react. Okay, I just think they've kind of played this little game like Groundhog Day in advance, and they're messing with your head, right? There are things that are being set up in advance when targeted individuals go on the run, and things just seem like they're set up when they get there. I've heard Zeph Daniels say that he believed that the hotel rooms and all that stuff were pre-wired when he got there, because there's just no way. It's not possible that these things can be pulled off. And that's another thing. Some of this stuff is technology, right? A lot of times targeted individuals are dealing with electronic devices or whatever. And there's those things being used. Doesn't have to be that way, though. Okay? That's the problem. How do you differentiate what's really happening? And like I said, I think the solution is the same. You need help. This whole situation is too much for you. You need the help of Christ. You definitely need God's help. Doesn't mean it's going to stop. But, I mean, what else are you going to do? And the Bible talks about how God is going to work all these things out for your good. So he's not afraid to subject his creation, his world, to the free will choices of both men and angels. And he can work things out. So even though it's not stopping, even though these things have been continuing, maybe even for decades in your life, it doesn't mean that God has said no. It doesn't mean that your prayers are not working. It doesn't mean that these things are not heading to a place where it's going to eventually make sense. And you're probably going to be very surprised when that happens. Okay, that's what I do. That's my hope, and that's what I would give you for advice. But it's difficult, and that's the whole point. We got to believe something that is contrary to whatever what it looks like. Otherwise, you wouldn't need faith. But at the end of the day, trying to differentiate this whole thing, you have to remember that the individuals involved in your scenario, in my opinion, are being influenced ultimately by the spiritual dimension. Okay, whether it's a government program, whatever you're dealing with. Ultimately, that's where it's coming from. So the individuals involved in your scenario are going to be ones that are more susceptible to that manipulation, whatever it is, whether they're involved in some kind of secret society that exposes them to that kind of thing, and that they are the ones now that have put their sight on you, or whether it's people who are playing around with black magic or the occult or whatever. Okay, or people who have kind of sold their soul and are working for the government and experimenting on citizens. However it works, they are now more susceptible, and they can be manipulated and used. So that's really the thing to remember. It's not necessarily that if you're dealing with synchronicities or some of this other stuff, that now you're being attacked by a coven of witches or something like that. It doesn't. That's not my point. But at the end of the day, guys, I mean, just enduring this stuff is really where it's at. Okay, and I ask for prayers from you guys from time to time, and I'm asking again, because it's really just that simple. All right, I may come across as if I know these things, or if I'm confident or whatever. My life is a roller coaster. I'm just, like anybody else. It's the long haul, and the temptation is always there to get angry or depressed, hopeless, and it looks like these people are getting away with it. You're tempted to go do something, but it's never a solution for you, You're just trying to live your life. It's difficult. So, that's really what you don't forget. These people are going to be judged. They're going to be taken care of. Don't let that delusion, take hold in your mind. It's one of the illusions. Whatever you're dealing with, whether you're dealing with a government program or electronic harassment, workplace harassment, these people are going to get called into the light. They're going to have to deal with it. So if you've experienced something that has to do with the occult, I'd appreciate a comment. I don't want to be the only one telling these stories. I'm the only one that looks crazy because I'm talking about it. That doesn't bother me. Now, okay, guys. Well, hopefully this video helped you out. Be good to yourselves. Be safe.